as the Hebrews in captivity or homecoming. The Torah has been transmitted to the Goy, cattle, beast of burden, food, animal, slave, work units, as the 5 books of Moses. The 6th and 7th books of Moses were included in Bibles like the Weimar in 1505 and printed in English around 1880. These were spell-casting texts, complete with the names of power and some hints to the secret names of God that were known only to the Kabbalists, Baal Shem, masters of the divine name. All 72 of them, so as to imply a hive entity. If you have ever wondered why, when you pray to your God and your prayers are never answered, you might want to consider what weight 1/72nd of a name might evoke during your supplication. The name, quote, God in Babylonian was synonymous with good and was the deity of luck and good fortune. The name God has become almost a generic title like governor. If you aren't calling out for Arnold or George, you might not get a response. The names of power outlined in the 6th and 7th books of Moses are categorized by what specific things can be requested of each one or group of names. My favorite is the very short windows on which days and time of days each summoning can be made. Sorry I can't come to the magic circle right now, but if you leave a name and number, I'll get back to you. Perhaps you are gifted with a small ray of sunshine in a sea of suffering and call it answered prayer. What is the statistic probability that it wasn't random chance? Perhaps your prayer got a negative, unfavorable, or punishing response. What is the statistical probability that that wasn't random chance? Statistically, we should see a standard bell curve distribution of good and evil for everyone, since it rains on the just and unjust, no matter how unjust that statement of fact is. But since God works in mysterious ways, perhaps you just needed to learn a punishing lesson despite the fact that your sin debt was already paid in full. Mysterious ways. How could a Christian even say these words without realizing their origin from the ancient Egyptian mystery school, where souls were doomed to reincarnation until they had learned the lesson that they had to acquire in their multiple lives? The same mystery school that gave you magical thinking gives you mysterious ways as a deflection from the logic that either you are way too stupid to know how to do the right thing to please a petulant God with the disposition of a vicious child demanding loyalty like a street gang leader beating his homies, or that there is an engineered disruption in the natural flow of random events. The Egyptian Gnostic Gospels talk about this world having a palpable evil. There is no bell curve distribution here. There is so much evil on this planet that it defies random chance or divine acquiescence from a voyeur, as we find in the Zoroastrian Ahura Mazda, who just passively watches it happen. It is engineered. The pat answer of the faithful is that same excuse found in the Persian Zoroastrian myth that the Ahriman is given free rein by his father Kronos, and Mazda is too perfect to interfere with evil, so man will have to fight evil for God. In 3rd grade, I learned 2 things that shaped my life from that point forward: the if-then statement in mathematics and the rules of sets and subsets. I can only judge an entity by my own standards. If I were an all-powerful God, I would stop evil at all costs. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That's a heavy burden to place if men were not the architects of evil, and evil was not their firstborn deity, twin. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for a good God to do nothing. In all of history and myth, no one has ever killed the devil. Has anyone ever prayed for the death of the devil? Sure, there are legends of endless battles with the devil, and it is vanquished and keeps coming back like Jason in a slasher movie. The devil might even be imprisoned and then let loose for a final battle before being put back in the penalty box. But the sick, Mortal Kombat video game never ends. The reset button just gets pressed and the same sick program reasserts itself with different players. The Latin word deicide means to kill God. Why would there be a concept in the language of humans that you could kill God, but there is no word whatsoever for killing the devil? Sometimes prayer is not answered at all. The children of Israel taunted the worshippers of Baal by asking why their prayers were not answered. Perhaps he was sleeping or on the toilet. Two separate families of the most devout Christians that I know each had a family member who were devastated by cancer. Both sets were abused by the medical system. Both families prayed for their former missionary relatives so that the disease would be healed. When each died lingering, agonizing deaths, it was declared God's will. This is the equivalent of mysterious ways. What did a selfless servant of the Hebrew deity do to deserve such an ignoble death? How stupid were they that they could not learn a life lesson in order to garner favor and be released of a demon disease called cancer, where almost all forms we know for a fact were engineered in labs by men and women who worship TL? Why was death the only reward for a faithful life ending in unimaginable suffering? The prince Siddhartha Gautama left his palace, an analogy for protected delusion, to see that all life was suffering. He abandoned what was planned for his future, an analogy for predestination and prophecy, and purposely set out on his own to create a remedy. First, to relieve suffering in himself, then relieve suffering in others. The 6,000-year tradition from Sumeria to here is one unbroken chain of suffering and death. Lower animals, as they are called, do everything to avoid pain. There is no logical inducement for a human to follow any path that has no remedy for the situation beyond inventing an attitude spin by reinterpreting a minor respite from harm as a major miracle and a major disaster as a blessing in disguise that should be offered up as a source of praise to the Creator. I ask black women of fine character who are suffering from terminal illness every week, how are you doing? I'm blessed, they say. If they were blessed, they would not be dying of terminal illness that was created by the World Health Organization. Why not worship the devil if heartbreak, unending pain, and death are something that is an object of praise, since this seems to be his domain? Praising God for pain? Think about it. Say it out loud. You can't spin that. It is absurd. The entire world has been traumatized by a cap-and-trade version of religion where a sacrifice has been made in your name even though it was not asked for or even necessary, but you're expected to and forced to take responsibility for and pay for a transaction that was done in absentia. All this has been logically codified by Epicurus around 321 BC. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is God both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? So we can see that the 6th and 7th books of Moses were in some Bibles that would have clearly delineated a black magic origin to this religion, but in 1604, King James commissioned an authorized English version that was printed in 1611. Let's take all these facts in context. King James was credited with uniting England and Scotland. That is the Sumerian way to create centralized herd control. You call it the New World Order. I call it the old religion's 6,000-year plan. George Washington and Abraham Lincoln wanted to form that more perfect union.